Shalom. Call Halim Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And a sincere shalom to the 144,001 third. Now, this lesson is going to go into taking the world. Okay? Because when you look at everything that's happening now in the present moment is a result of something that happened in the past. Something that happens now is not predicated upon the future. It's predicated upon the past. You understand? So the way society is now is because the Most High Yahweh set it up that way for Esau to take over the earth with the sword. It spread his wine across the four corners. And in order for all of that to be taken out of his authority is for him to be taken out. And here's a scripture from Yahweh Shai himself that details that scenario. This is St. Matthew, the 12th chapter, in verse 29. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house, which represents what? Territory. A strong man is just a man with strength, the capability to protect or defend. And then a house would be your territory, your domain. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods? Yeah, your home is typically a secure place, right, where you hold your money, clothing, food, your women, your children, your medicinal herbs, your wine. You understand? Except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. Yeah, because a man is not going to just let you run through his stuff. He's going to protect it. So in order to go into this man's house and take his things, right, of course he's going to be in the house or near the home in this context. What do? You take him out of commission, then you run up in his stuff. And guess, so how can you take the earth? All right, if you want to take over the earth, you want to rule the world, well, you have to what? Bind the rulers of the world, and then you take the world. So let's go to Job, the 9th chapter, to get further confirmation on who controls the earth. This is Job 9 and verse 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So the wicked controls the earth. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, there's a lot of different nations that had authority, right, in the kingdom of men, right? But let's read further. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So this person, this particular, all right, rulership of the wicked, okay, which is the Edomites, by the way, so-called white man. What did they do? They covered the faces of the judges thereof. So who are the judges? The Most High Yahweh, who the world English calls God, Yahweh Shai, the angels, the Israelites. Those are the four judges, four categories of judges. All right, Yahweh, Yahweh Shai, the angels, the Israelites. Okay, simple. So when you read the scriptures, those four judges are described to look like the individuals you see on the screen. All right, dark brown flesh. Okay, white hair. All right, that's what the description says. And then the description that is presented to us is really a form of blasphemy, because to have pale flesh, right, to be so-called a white person, right, is leprosy. All right, that happened to Miriam, and I think also in Kings or Chronicles, somebody's lineage was plagued with leprosy, which is the pigmentation stripped from your skin, all right, which are so-called white, all right, people, which their skin is just translucent, and you see the blood through their skin, and they're red, which that's what the Edomites stands for. That's what Edom means. It means red people. Okay. Also, to have blonde hair, right, yellow hair, is also leprosy of the hair and your whatever, your hair follicles, whatever, right? So these Edomites are lepers. Of course, they're clean. They're clean lepers. You know, they're not dirty. They're clean, but they have leprosy, which is a sin. Since I made that point, let's go to, was it Daniel, the 10th chapter? Yeah, Daniel, the 10th chapter in verse 5, because Daniel, he saw Yahushai. Okay, he saw Yahushai like John the Revelator in Revelations. So let's go into Daniel's description, then John's description, and we'll go further. So this is Daniel, the 10th chapter, in verse 5. Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose linen were girded with the fine gold of Uphaz. So he had clothing on, and then he had a girded. So he had a girdle, which is like a belt. So basically a belt. To get a more visualization of it, think of those belts you see in WWE or UFC, like a UFC World Champion belt. That's a girdle. His body also was like the burl, so that's the linen. He had on a burl, is like a greenish color. He had a green garment on, and his face as the appearance of lightning. Yet it is mentioned that when you're wise, your face shines. Let's get that. This is Ecclesiastes 8:1. Who is as the wise man, and who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine, and the boldness of his face shall be changed. There you go. All right. Let's go back to Daniel 10. In his eyes as lamps of fire. Yeah, his eyes were what? Glowing, because he had a different body, right? Yahushai transfigured, all right, into an immortal flesh, a different type of DNA, if you will. And his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass. So in Revelations, I believe it's the first chapter, when John was describing Yahushai, who the world inwardly calls Jesus Christ, right? Is Yahushua HaMashiach. He only described his feet. But here we're getting his arms and his feet as polished brass, which is when you have brass and you burn it in a furnace or however you heat it up, which darkens it, and then you polish it up, right? So he had dark brown feet and dark brown arms. All right, why? Because he is a so-called black man. And the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. So he had, again, a different voice. A different body, a different molecular structure. He was built not like a man. He was built like Yahweh intended him to be built, and the Israelites when we get into the kingdom, when we get beamed up, Adon Ratazah, part of the elect, and of course the 2/3 when they're born into the kingdom. So this is Revelations, the first chapter, and in verse 13, in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot. So his garment was from his shoulders down to his feet. All right. One like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and a girt about the paps with a golden girdle. All right. So this is John seeing Yahushai like Daniel saw Yahushai. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire. So, of course, Daniel didn't describe his hair, but now we have John describing his hair, which is white and woolly. So his beard, eyebrows, his afro, if you will, was white and woolly, white like wool. You understand? Now, of course, These so-called white supremacists and delusional heathens out there, right? 2/3, whoever, right? They're going to say, oh, it's just saying his hair is white. That's it. It's not saying it's woolly. But don't worry, we'll go further into it. We'll prove the point even more. And of course, John is giving the description of his eyes being as a flame of fire, as Daniel. Verse 15, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as a sound of many waters. So, of course, pretty much read that Daniel. So here's the point right here to prove that he's a so-called dark-skinned individual, if you will. Let's get this right here. This is Luke, the 24th chapter, verse 39. This is Yahweh Shai speaking. Behold, my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. There you go. So his hands and his feet represents his flesh. That proves the point. He's a dark-skinned individual. But yet the wicked has painted him to look like them, so-called a white, Caucasian, whatever you want to call it, which is what? Blasphemy. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But here's the point right here. And I think it's also in the book of Daniel, maybe 6th or 7th chapter. I'm going to try the 7th chapter first. Might be the 6th chapter. Okay, Daniel, the 7th chapter, verse 9. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit. The Ancient of Days is Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls God, whose garment was white as snow. So Yahweh was wearing a white garment, white clothing, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, right? It didn't say white, didn't say red, black, green. It said pure wool. So guess what? Yahweh has woolly hair, right? Like a so-called black person. Of course, Yahweh Shai is it looks like Yahweh, as it is written. He looks like his father. He looks like Yahweh. This is Colossians 1:15. Who is the image? Who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature? There you go. He's the image of his father. So Yahweh has white woolly hair. Yahweh Shai has white woolly hair. There you go. Now let's get this right here in Numbers, the 12th chapter, and verse 9. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. So Yahweh was, if you read the whole chapter from the top, Miriam and Aaron was pretty much talking shit about Moses. And Yahweh wasn't too keen on hearing that shit talking and punished Miriam for it. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. There you go. Having pale flesh is a sin. You understand? But yet, the devil, the wicked, which is so-called white man, has deceived the world. And guess what? He's got hell to pay for that. And his judgment is going to be hardcore bondage, captivity, slavery, and then a nice bonfire extermination. These devils are going to get taken off the planet Earth. And this is what I'm reading, all right, in the scriptures is going to be how it's going to play out. This is Daniel, the 7th chapter and verse 18. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. There you go. These Edomites, you're going to have Yahweh on down, putting in work on these devils, taking out their militaries, taking out their weapons, and then grabbing up their elites, throwing them in the pit. Let's get that. This is Isaiah 24 and 22. Actually, verse 21. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall punish the hosts of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. There you go. That's your bankers, right? People that's running BlackRock, people that's running these banks, this monetary system. You understand? That's running these militaries, that's running the world. These secret elites, they're going to be taken. They're going to be put into captivity because they're the wicked. Let's get this in Micah, the 4th chapter. In verse 13, arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I'll make thine horn iron, and I will make thy hooves brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people. There you go. That's spiritual power. Because you see the Israelites now, fit like on a physical level fighting or whatnot. We don't have no spiritual power, right? We're just regular human beings, if you will. Of course, we're still Yasharallah, so we're gonna still dominate in things that we put our minds to. But guess what? It's gonna go to another level. It's gonna go to an extremely high level that's currently not available to the Israelites. And that extreme high level is going to be used to conquer the world. Plain and simple. Let's get Zechariah, the 9th chapter. And verse 13. Actually, verse 11. As for thee also, by the blood of thy covenant, I have sent forth the prisoners out of the pit wherein is no water. Turn you to the stronghold, ye prisoners of hope. Even to the day do I declare that I will render double unto thee. When I have bent Judah for me, filled with the bow of Ephraim, and raised up thy sons, O Zion, against thy sons, O Greece, and made thee as a sword of a mighty man. There you go. The Most High Yahweh is going to turn up the Israelites. All right, and that verse is talking about Judah, which is so-called African Americans, and Ephraim, which is so-called Puerto Ricans, which ironically, you have Puerto Rico is a part of the U.S. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. They have U.S. passports. They can live in the U.S. for their entire lives. And Americans can live in Puerto Rico their entire lives. It's treated as like the U.S. Virgin Islands, for example. Right? It's not a state like Hawaii or Alaska or whatever. It's not a state, but it's a territory, which is nonetheless almost exactly the same thing. Almost. So guess what? They're going to get turned up. The elect, even 2/3 are going to get turned up. All right? The Israelites as a whole are going to get turned up because that's the indignation of Yahweh. Let's end this in St. John, the 14th chapter. And verse 12. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go unto my Father. There you go. So the Israelites out here are going to be turned up more than Yahweh Shai, putting in work on these heathen, specifically you Edomites. And with that, shalom.